Well, welcome back to Not Done. I'm Sloan Dean, and today I'm sitting down with Rachel Moniz, the Chief Operating Officer of HEI Hotels and Resorts, one of the largest privately held hotel investment and third-party management companies in the U.S. Rachel oversees day-to-day operations of over 100 institutional quality hotels and partners with over 30 capital partners. She's also part of the AHLA Foundation Paving a Way Award winner, the co-founder and chair of HEI's Women in Leadership Council and Leaders Breaking Barriers. And under her leadership, HEI has crossed 25% gender parity at the GM level. And Rachel and I have run in the same circles for many, many years, but actually we've just recently met thanks to our co-friend Tom at Ascendant Capital. So Tom, I know you listen in. Thanks very much. So Rachel, welcome to Not Done. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much for that warm welcome and introduction, and I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I guess let's start off with, for folks that don't know you, did you always see yourself as a hospitality executive when you were growing up?
No, and I didn't even really think about that as a job that could turn into a career. And I think, like so many people, especially in operations, I fell into it. It was sort of accidental, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm kind of good at this," and then you stick with it. But for me, like I've always worked, and I had always served tables and bartended. But I was in a hotel with my mom actually, and I was moving to Boston and I was looking for a job in the Sunday paper, the Boston Globe. And I kind of made friends with the guys at the front desk. They were all there from Ireland. They had like won the lottery visas. And so I thought that was so interesting. And I was talking to them. And then and they were helping me try to find a job. And then the front office manager came out and said, "Why don't you work here?" And I had never really thought about that possibility, but that was how I started in hotels specifically.
And I've heard I was reading some about you, and you talk about the art and science of hotels. What does that specifically mean? And when did it click to you that, hey, I can make a career out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we named it art and science like in our firm a decade ago or something, but it's always been there. It's always been sort of ingrained in hospitality, this idea of creating the experience for the guest and even the fun around revenue generation and finding different ways to inflate the top line is always great. But when I was actually working for Starwood, I was at the St. Regis in Aspen, and Starwood had rolled out this idea of like optimal staffing. And because I was in Aspen and it's a seasonal resort, I was like, oh, like when optimal staffing actually shakes out, I can have 0 hours in mud season at the front desk. So like how do I do this? And so I remember going to my director of finance at the time, and I think in this particular moment I was the hotel manager, and I was like, I don't really know how to run my business like this. Like, what do I do? And he was able to give me a lot of insights and information as to what optimal staffing really meant, like right person, right time, and that's when it started to click, like, okay, now I understand that, I need to, operate differently. So you learn the science of the business, and I'm really lucky because I learned it before automation. So I really had to like calculate cost per occupied room and present back to the general manager and the director of finance. And then I learned that later in life that I was creating real estate value. And that's something that I've really tried to harness and teach people as I, go forward in my career.
Yeah. So you fast forward, you joined HEI in 2008.
Yeah.
Tell me about that decision and why HEI.
Yeah. So actually, interestingly, I joined HEI a little after I know it says 2008, but I was the
Okay.
general manager at the Liberty Hotel, and
In
HEI
Boston.
bought in Boston, yes,
Okay.
my baby, and HEI bought the hotel. And in one day, I had a new management company owner operator. So there a new owner, a new management company, and then they also branded the hotel. It was an independent, fiercely independent hotel. They branded it. and made it Luxury Collection, which at the time was with Starwood. Of course, now it's with Marriott. They were going to fire me. I mean, I think, back then, when you come in and you have a new business plan, like, get rid of the GM because they're not going to be able to execute the business plan, right? Oh, 100%. But what had happened was the minority owner stayed in, who was also the developer. So this is a guy that I was like effectively working for. And, he told HEI, like, you're definitely going to want to fire Rachel. Like, you don't have anyone like her. Like, she's feisty. Like, she's, and, but you're not, but he wouldn't, he was their partner, and he had, his own real money in the deal. And he was like, you can't fire her. And he put that in the agreement. And he was so old school. He showed me the agreement. He was like, you've got cover for like a year. They can't touch you. And that was him being really protective of his investment. There was a lot of things that, I had done that were really good for that hotel. And frankly, at the time, HEI didn't manage hotels like this. This was their first real like luxury lifestyle, hotel with like this activated nightlife and really anchored in the community, like all the stuff that I'm still so proud of that it is today. We still manage it today, all these years later. So I like to say I came with the building, and it was a little rocky. I didn't align at the time with a lot of the things, and so we had to come to an understanding. and my ask was, can you just like stop trying to change everything about this hotel that gives it a soul? That'd be great.
Yeah.
And I talked a lot about positioning and how important that is to, create that kind of like halo effect, and like that was important. And I think I said, like, you don't run hotels like this, so like you just have to trust me. But then there was also an ask on their part, which was like, can you stop fighting us at every single like twist and turn? Like because I was like, no, I don't want to change it. I want to change it. And actually, when I agreed to meet HEI halfway, I became such a better general manager, such a better business leader. I embraced the platform. And then, ultimately, maybe a couple of years later, I got a call at the time from Ted Darnell, still a partner in the firm, but and he's like, remember, how protective you were? And he's like, well, I'd love for you to do that at corporate. Like, we're going to grow in this luxury space, this independent luxury lifestyle space, and we'd love for you to run it. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay right here. And he's like, well, that's not the way it works. So here I am. Now I'm the COO. But yeah, so I went to corporate, and eventually, I probably almost immediately became a regional vice president, and I had dual roles. And then I ran food and beverage, and then became executive vice president, and now I'm in my role now. So it's been a journey all along with HEI, and it's been great to be a part of the evolution of that company. Like, culturally, it's the best company today, and it didn't used to be. So it's nice to see where we've landed.
Yeah. Well, you're a big part of that. Culture happens through people, not to people. And
Right.
now, for those people listening in that maybe aren't familiar with HEI, frame it up about the company. How do you want them to know about the company? And then two, what makes you guys unique?
So a little bit about our company was that we were founded by the Mendel brothers, Gary and Steve Mendel, and that was in the mid 80s. And then they had sold the company. They were actually partners with Barry Sternlicht, with Starwood, and so the company is kind of iterated over a period of time. But really, the foundation of our company is that we're an owner operator, and eventually, as the world changed, and we wanted to grow, it was not possible to grow outside of our funds that we had raised. We could only manage for our funds, and so we ended up, after selling off hotels, dissolving the funds, decided not to raise a fourth fund and go into the third party management business so we could grow our business. We still do JV deals, like, so we have some sliver equity in hotels, and that's about 25% of our portfolio, but we run all of our hotels as if we owned them all. And I think that is a big point of differentiation. And so that means that you're going to be a little scrappy. You're not necessarily going to subscribe to everything that every brand wants you to do. You want to be a good partner to the brands, of course, and try to prioritize and align priorities. But it's just you're just going to operate differently, because what you're looking to do as somebody who has the lens of an owner is create value anywhere you can. And so that comes up in a number of ways, and that might mean if there's a PIP and something in the PIP is requiring you to invest in meeting space, but that's not the best, you're not going to get a return on that investment, and there's a much better use for those dollars. We're not saying necessarily like negotiate the PIP all the way down that you don't spend money, but like how can we reallocate those funds into something that, you know, is going to create value. So like that's what I mean. Like we always think that way, and I think that that's been a big point of differentiation for our firm.
Yeah. And if you're describing like to someone who you're bringing on the team and maybe they're interviewing at Ambridge and Highgate, what would you say in a few sentences to someone like this is what HEI is about?
I would say our culture, and we talked a little bit about that. We actually call it HEI Loves. We branded it HEI Loves
HEI
because,
loves.
yeah, HEI Loves. And I know
Very
and
cool.
when we first started to go out with this for public consumption and say, you know, the word love maybe is sometimes a little uncomfortable in business, but we were actually quite comfortable with it because we think everything triangulates back to love and our people. So everything that we do under this construct, under this idea of HEI Loves is for really for our people, and ultimately our clients, our owners get the benefit of this culture. But that would be one thing that I think is a big point of differentiation, and actually why people join our company. I think our portfolio also speaks for itself. And then I think the last thing is that this company, like even though it's big and we've got like 14 or 15,000 employees and like 300 people in the corporate office, like we think that we're like 6 people. Like we think that we're so small that we're a startup, and we make decisions really quickly. There's no red tape. It's like if somebody has a good idea, I don't care where I hear it, I get the best ideas. Hotel teams have the best ideas. They know the most, they give you the best information. And so we just like take that back, caucus quickly, and then we put it in place. So those are some points of differentiation for our company.
Well, you and I have both spent many a year in third-party hotel management. There's been a lot of change over the last 10, 20 years in that, you know, there's been a lot of consolidation, start stops, probably nothing smaller than the Ambridge Interstate merger of 2019.
Yeah.
How are you seeing the industry today?
So we don't think we have a lot of competitors. And I think that's
That's good.
because, yeah, no, we just don't. I mean, we know we have competitors, but we don't think that we have more than like 4. And even though there's a million third party management companies, and I don't say that in a way that's like arrogant, I just mean that there's just so few hotel management companies that have the portfolio that we have, the owners that we have. I mean, it is like best in class in terms of our owner.
Do you guys
And
say no a lot? Is that part of the strategy too?
yeah, well, we have to, and that's exactly right. That's what I was going to get to is that we to keep the integrity of our portfolio and what we've built, we've sort of developed a niche in upper upscale, premium, luxury, lifestyle. Like that's kind of like our space. We have a couple of huge hotels, you know, Westin Grand Central and like convention center hotels and stuff like that. We're good at that stuff. The more complicated the asset, the better we are. We
Most
actually
likely because you can, there's more ways to add value.
there's more ways to add value, and also we have the resources and the experts to add value. And I think like conversely, if you give me a small select serve hotel in a tertiary market, I don't know that I can create that much value because it just lacks complexity. But then also what happens, and I have to think about this as somebody who's a principal in our company, is the resources. So then you start to deploy resources to something that you can't really, it's not complicated, but I'm still deploying resources there. So that's taking resources away from a more complex asset where we can create value. So I'd rather just not take it in the first place. So I work really closely with our investments team, and basically we'll underwrite it, we'll look at it, and then it's like we're going to have to just turn this one down because they're better off going to an operator that, you know, maybe this is their specialty. And that's not to say that we wouldn't take on a select serve hotel, but it's got to be like an urban, you know, it's got to be in our wheelhouse basically.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. There's been a lot of management companies that have been acquired by private equity over the last decade, 2 decades. What is your take of
Yeah, I have
PE
opinions.
owning all these management companies?
I'm just glad that we're not one of them. We don't have a balance sheet. We don't have a balance sheet. I mean, like I said, like we're nimble. We operate like a startup. Like that's our attitude, and like it makes us fiercely independent.
Yeah, I was always pretty opinionated too, in that when I was running Remington's not owned by private equity, but I always saw the PE game as, there's an opportunity because if you have new capital come in and they're willing to spend money on things, then that's good. But PE wants an exit and they want to grow and exit. In a lot of businesses that can be helpful, but it can be forced growth. It's kind of like every deal is a good deal, and that's just not the case. I think
Yeah, I
sometimes
mean, there's examples of how that didn't work out for one
100%.
company.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So,
look at I had
yeah,
Craig Smith on. He knows it. I mean, you look at
yeah,
Ambridge.
yeah.
The story there that played out over the last couple of years is not good for anyone. And Advent had to walk away and lose hundreds of millions of dollars because the strategy is about sacrifice in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's right. I totally agree. And I mean, PE, I mean, that's like a 5 year, maybe on a good day, 8 year
Five,
deal,
10,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Most are usually a 5 year cycle. Timing is part of the challenge too. You know,
right.
I think it's good and bad. I mean, I don't want to take capital out of the system, but I do think that some of the mid-market PE firms that have moved into the third-party landscape has led to some bad behavior. It seems like in the last couple of years, because of Ambridge, a couple of other things that have happened, that people are being a bit smarter about things. So at least that's my
Agree.
my take.
No, I agree with you.
I was doing the math. There are just over 26,000 hotels in the United States that are third party managed now. There's about 60,000 hotels in the US in total. So less than half are third party managed. But that piece of the pie is growing quite a bit. How do you think about this landscape of there's hundreds of competitors? um, at least in the United States. I really liked your response. Maybe you lean in on that you said we don't see ourselves as having that many competitors, even though there's hundreds.
We
Yeah.
don't. I think it's because of the real estate that we manage. It's very specific. The way our firm is, we keep everything small too. I mean, you talk to some of the other management companies and you ask, how many hotels does your regional vice president oversee? And it is like a scary number. For me, my regional vice presidents, they can't supervise more than 15 hotels. And that in this industry is very small. That's a very small. So you have a whole regional team, regional vice president of, then you've got like your sales, your revenue, your finance person, the region, 15 hotels, like that's close supervision. That's just like a core value. And I don't think that you can do that if you can't get to the hotels to see what's going on site. If you're a regional revenue person, you're talking to your dorms almost every day. You should be. You've got to participate in weekly calls. I mean, you can't just skim the surface and be successful with my company. Here, sometimes when I interview GMs from other companies, like I'll just ask a little, try to get a little insight, like their perspective on their current company, or maybe someone that they worked with a few years ago. And if this is a high performing individual, what they'll say is, well, I don't really hear from them. They kind of leave me alone because I ran a successful shop. And, in so many words, that's what they're saying. And I'm like, we would never do that. Where there is fish, like go get more fish. Like we just see that as like more opportunity. If the hotel's successful, you'll probably get promoted to an area managing director. You'll probably become a mentor to other GMs and we'll use your hotel as a best example. But like, we're not going to go away and leave you alone and never call on you. Like we're going to expect more value. That's a sign of success, is like year over year, how do we make our owners more money? And what I saw with my regions was when I went over 15, it starts to crack. Like if all of a sudden someone's, because maybe we had to deploy by an ownership group, we always grow. Like that's our story, is that like we start with one hotel and we end up growing with owners. And then they want to stay with the same RVP. I'm like, I need to rearrange things because once it gets over 15, it doesn't really work from my perspective in our company.
When my last regional operating role, I was a VP of sales for Interstate. This is back when Jing Jiang and Thayer bought them out of bankruptcy. I had 42 hotels.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's crazy. How did you do that?
It was a lot of owner team arbitrage. I mean,
Yeah.
I would like to think I was better than your average Joe, but in reality, in that moment, you can't be overly strategic. I mean, you can be strategic around like when I go meet with IBM, or let's say I'm doing some the aggregate sales, I can talk about multiple hotels at a time. But when it comes to, okay, if I have 5 open director of sales on property, and revenue management reported into me too, so that's even another thing. You are reactive. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Now, I was lucky. I think at the time, Inland America owned like 30 of them. So I was concentrated in one owner, but it's just not feasible,
It's
right?
not feasible. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not getting stuff done. You're not getting to everything.
Like, what's the biggest issue I'm facing today? Oh, I got 2 DOSs that just got terminated, and I got a relaunch of a hotel, but the other hotels, you're on your own.
Right, exactly. And so we don't leave people alone. That doesn't work for us.
You guys are the largest operator of luxury collection hotels in the United States. Your portfolio is really known for having a lot of the soft brands. What is your take of soft brands? Because they have boomed. I mean, you talk about arguably the best success in the last 15 years for Marriott has been the Autograph brand. I mean,
Totally.
that
Oh,
brand has
crushes
just
it.
exploded. Yeah, they've crushed it. Curio for Hilton. I could go down the line. There's tons of them now.
Generally, my take is that we like soft brands. I think you get, obviously, the distribution system, yet you get this like brand story that's independent and unique because, the hotel is first and sort of like the flag
So
sits
kind of the
behind
best of
it.
both worlds, maybe. Like
kind
you
of the
get
kind of the best of both worlds, but not every soft brand's created equal. I mean, the customer buying behavior is not the same in every soft brand. You mentioned Autograph. That's a great win. That's a great example of a customer that will buy up. A luxury collection is another one where I would say all day long that customer sees value. I mean, the Bonvoy customer will buy into that sort of like upper tier. We've had, situations where the core brand is what that customer is attracted to. And when they've tried to create a collection brand, the idea is that that customer is going to buy up, like you see with Marriott to Autograph, Autograph to luxury collection. But we've had situations where that hasn't happened. So I would say that we like soft brands, but not all soft brands are created equal. You've got to have the right one. You have to look at the brand landscape. And then the other thing is that you might not need a brand because like you could be in a situation where it's an 80% market anyway. So obvious, and those are obvious comments, but like those are conversations we're having all the time with owners. What's the right brand, or do you run it independent? The brands will always be there, right? How do you negotiate the best key money? What's the best positioning of the asset? I mean, those are all things. But interestingly, like I don't always think that like going to a soft brand from a core brand's the right thing. Sometimes it is. But I had an owner maybe like a year ago. It was a DoubleTree that we were running, and it was a really special DoubleTree though, and it wasn't like a traditional box. I think it used to be an independent hotel, so it was beautifully designed. And so there was this idea of like, should we not have it? Keep it in Hilton, but should we have should we make it a soft brand? And I was like, no, because I think that like DoubleTree is a really solid. We only have like one DoubleTree, but it's been a really solid brand recognition. But I think for me, it was more like, I don't know, you've got a sea of soft brands, and I think the customers are super confused out there. In this scenario, this market, given the landscape, I'd stay with the warm cookie. Like that was kind of my recommendation. And it's still a DoubleTree. We didn't change it. It's just a really cool differentiated DoubleTree that sits at the top of its class in like every metric. And I think that that's okay. So
Yeah, you called out luxury collection and Autograph. Like, what are a couple other soft brands that you think are really strong?
I think Curio is pretty strong. I think that's a good luxury brand. You will find a customer that will buy up.
Hmm.
Lots of flexibility within that brand as well. Hyatt is starting to, we don't manage any like Hyatt soft brands. We have Hyatt Regencies
Right.
that do very well, and Hyatt has a great commercial team. I mean, there's like all the brands have like positive attributes. I would say that'll be interesting to see how some of these brands do. Like I know that they're obviously focused on a couple of them like JDV and things like that. So some of our owners have converted hotels and put them in these brands, and so we'll get information as to how they perform, and I think that's going to be something interesting to watch.
How are you
Yeah.
thinking about AI as the chief operating officer? What's actually working? What's hype? Give us some insights.
Listen, I think that AI is helpful. It takes away tasks so that people can think and make good business decisions. It's always been part of our revenue management infrastructure. It's going to change the way people find hotels. And 2 weeks ago, we had our commercial conference. And so I just made sure during the conference that I went to everything that was AI technology related as it relates to marketing. We do have independent hotels where that's more applicable because we're, sort of have to have the right partners and make the right strategic decisions. The majority of the hotels that we manage are branded. So we also sit on all those advisory boards and stay really close to what they're doing. We have in-house IT, which is another, I think, point of differentiation for our company. We don't outsource any of that. It's all in-house. We've got an amazing chief technology officer. And then we also have in our shop code writers and a data warehouse and all of those things, which is also important when you're talking about these like brand ecosystems. So I would say that, like, of course it's helpful, but I just have a point of view that I don't want to overthink it, because this is a human-centric business, and that's never going to change. Will it create efficiencies? Will it help people's bandwidth? Sure, of course. But it's not going to change some foundational things about this business that, I think are really important.
That's a great point. I maybe want to lean into that. Labor, not one of the largest costs in a hotel. It's also, It's not just a cost center. It's the heart and soul of hospitality at the same time. So if AI is definitely increasing productivity, what's your view of, like, do we have situations in hotels, though, where AI does eventually lead to job replacement?
Yeah, you said your first job in hotels was an analyst for IHG. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't be hired. Your job is going to be taken over by AI, right? I think that, analysts, like even like in our shop, like we have analysts and they're not going to be replaced with AI, but that's because of how you reshape the position, right? Like, so you're doing analysis so that you can then go out and help the hotels to understand how foundationally they can work differently to improve performance based upon this data that we have, right? And so there's always a human being that's going to, I think, be needed in this universe. I just think that you can use AI to take tasks away to create those types of efficiencies, but I just don't see how it's going to replace every position. I think that you'll okay, so for example, guests will have leveraged technology. It used to be that everybody had a call center and an on-site reservations department. Remember
Right.
those days?
Right.
And so now that's ridiculous. You don't pick up the phone and call. For the most part, people are doing everything themselves on their phone. So then therefore you need less resources in the form of maybe people answering the phone, front desk agents, etc. And then there's also talk if you go think about robots. We've piloted the robotic vacuum, and some of them are pretty cool.
Did it lead to you removing a housekeeper? What's the outcome of it?
We didn't see the benefit of it as much up in the guest rooms for a lot of different reasons. Housekeeper vacuuming their way out of a room is not a huge time suck, and it was more the meeting space. We have some hotels that have 100,000 square feet of meeting space, and if you want to vacuum those, you were doing it, usually you'd have a banquet setup person on one of those movable vacuums that you ride.
Right.
But that still takes a lot of time, so you throw the robots in there, they learn the space, they get programmed, and then they effectively go and vacuum the space. Yeah, we saw some productivity savings there. So I think that that's a great use of robots. Do I think a robot won't be able to make a bed? At least not, we're not, George Jetson yet. So so it's we don't have Rosie. We have one hotel that has that tug robot thing. Maybe you've seen them in hospitals. You stock it with something that,
Called Tug?
Yeah, tug. Yeah.
Okay.
And so they have them in hospitals. Basically, it's you program these things, and they were built for hospitals, and you put some stuff in there that you need, and then it goes and delivers it all the way across the hospital. So
Interesting.
Tried it in a hotel scenario, and it does require some human resource, right? Because you have to get what the guest has digitally requested, and you have to stock it and then send it. So in that scenario where we have that in the hotel, I went to the hotel. I met with it was like the front office manager was like really in charge of it. So I didn't want to meet with the GM. I wanted to meet with like the person who knows how to like really work. And so I was like, take me through everything that happens. And then I just decided, I feel like because you're trying to do everything through this robot, nothing's really getting done efficiently. So let's just use it for like three things. And so we determined what the top three requests were that didn't require like moving food and things that like, become vulnerable in that environment. And so that's how we leveraged it. But like if you try to do too much, it just doesn't work. So you have to be really compartmentalized and strategic about the way that you use technology in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think stair step change is how robotics will come to hotels. I agree with you. I mean, I was asked this question on a panel, and I said we're long from the days of like an Optimus. You show up in an Optimus is cleaning the entire room. That's, I mean, that may be in the future, but it's not in the
Yeah.
very near term future for sure. So moving from like AI to leadership, you're the co-founder and chair of HEI's Women in Leadership Council. You guys hit a 25% gender parity at the GM level. Tell us more about that, because I do think, we are an industry that is 60% women and I'm quoting that from American Hotel and Lodging Association, but at the GM level, I don't know what the exact number is, but I want to say it's 80% men.
So going back to when I was given the corporate opportunity or I took my assignment in corporate, moving from general manager. I, looked around the HEI landscape, and we were a smaller company then because it was owner operator, smaller, maybe 35, 38 hotels at the time, but we only had 3 female GMs. And so,
which is not all that uncommon, Frank.
No.
That's pretty common
Right.
for the industry.
So I wanted to change that. So I used my platform to do that. And that's when I started Women in Leadership, and it's almost been a decade. And so, like, my first meeting was like so pathetic. It was like me, an HR person, and then like 4 women that were like, and 2 of them were the other were GMs. And so it was small. And now it's like 70 people, and it's comprised of our female general managers and then women in operations that we've identified as high performers, high potential, who are tracking to become GMs, but maybe they're at like a division head level. And they need more. They need sponsorship. They need experience. They need to manage an EC. Oftentimes we find that people who come up through operations, they know everything about operations. Sometimes you find somebody who like came up through rooms and they need to learn food and beverage, and so we give them that, but they don't know like sales strategy. And so what I do is meet with them individually, the junior council members, the ones that aren't GMs, and I figure out where the void is in their work history, and then I provide them with a development plan that's customized to them. And then I go give them the experience and the opportunity. So if I know a GM's going on paternity leave or there's an opening, like that person will go through a series of trainings and get experience and exposure. And I leverage all of our corporate resources to give them what they need to be a successful GM. And then I put them on task force as a GM. And then they get that experience. And then when I know we've got a new deal or we've got an opening and I know where they want to relocate or not relocate, that's where I can put them in. And so I've done that for years and years and years. And it's been successful. We broke 25%. I think we're at 30% and we're still growing. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but think about our portfolio. The majority of women general managers are in select serve hotels. We have a very small select serve portfolio. So the fact that we're at that percentage and they're managing these big complicated assets means that they're getting paid more. They're in major markets. They can take that experience and become an area managing director, a regional vice president, whatever. Like you can but it's a matter of just getting to that point. And yes, I'm passionate about that.
Well, I appreciate that passion. That's awesome. My wife went to hotel school at BU, and she's really passionate about women in leadership too. So I get it 100% from a personal level for my wife, Pam, and seeing that. I often want to ask people their take on, well, what's the causation? The numbers are the numbers. It is still hugely, it's not as diverse as what you're talking about. I mean, you do not have 30% plus executives that are women. What's the causation for that still today?
Well, I think there's so many reasons, and we could have a whole other podcast on just this
Yeah,
topic.
yeah.
But yes, no, I think that there's so many barriers. Women and men, they come into this industry basically 50-50. And you're right, there's more females than males in the industry. But as they start to rise, you get to a certain point where you go, I'm attached to this business, it's open 24/7. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have a whole life and really have that work-life balance. And so women are oftentimes making decisions about their career before they even encounter a problem. And so I think what has to happen is companies have to come out and say, we want you to have a whole life, men and women. And I tell my general managers, like, if you're leaving work early to go to your kid's soccer game, say that. Don't make up a thing that you've got a meeting off site or something, because that's not true. Like, say that, because it's important that everybody there knows that you have a whole life and you have a family and you have priorities. And also, things happen, and like sometimes you have to pay more attention to work and sometimes you have to pay more attention to your family. I don't really believe in this idea of balance. I think it's more of like a sway. You kind of sway in and out, and you just want to work for a company that like will support you in doing that. So I think some of that happens. Women also have more responsibility in the family. That's just a fact. So then they're like, they're overdoing it at home and they're overdoing it at work, and it's like, at some point something's got to give. From my perspective, I try to tell any women that are high performers that I would love to see rise to the GM level. There should be no ceiling, but that would be like a first big milestone. Just tell them, like, don't worry about that. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. There's no such thing as a perfect wife or a perfect employee. Like, none of that exists. And so we really try to create this community where we talk about some of those barriers and we talk about some of those worries. When I was a hotel manager, I was in my 20s at a luxury hotel, general manager in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. So imagine me, like, I'm managing these amazing assets. I'm trying to tell people that have much more experience my perspective or give direction or support or whatever that looks like. And, there's not like this inherent respect. And so that can be like, that in itself can be a barrier. Like, who wants to deal with that all day long? Or like, you can't just show up and say, because I have this role, I want to give direction. You have this other thing that you have to kind of get over. And so it shouldn't be like that. And I think it's probably a little better today than it obviously was when I was starting out in management, but it still exists. I think a lot of it is like, we need sponsorship at all levels, mainly the senior levels, the decision makers. We need to make sure that the C-suites in these companies are aware of this inequitable behavior that's happening, even if they're not completely aware of it, or they don't, of course they don't subscribe to it, but just to be aware of it and to try to put real tactics in place to give people equal opportunity. I think that's going to help solve it. I'm on the American Hotel Lodging Association. Forward is our like women in leadership initiative. Right now I'm in Atlanta because we had a meeting. I'm on the advisory board. So we had an advisory board meeting this morning. It was a great meeting. We were talking about, women in leadership in hospitality, not just hotels, how, we need to create more programs, more training opportunities. People need to not just fall into this business, but to really understand that you can make a career out of this. And so it's two things. It's about getting people in, and then once they're in and they start to rise, it's about staying with something and not just leaving the industry or going into sales and human resources, but like stay in operations so that you can be the most senior person, the CEO of this hotel. The way that our company is like, if there's a problem, we want to solve it. And so when we took a step back, we said, okay, do we have parity at every level of the EC? And we do, like in finance, in sales, we have more women than men, revenue management, HR. And the one problem area that we had was the GM level.
Yeah.
And then we went to go tackle it, right? So it's just like, it's a problem, we're going to go solve it. But it takes like real work and real sponsorship.
Well, good for you guys. And it's not just a HEI problem, it's an industry problem. Having grown up in this business the last 20 years, I saw three things. I saw one that I would call like a social bias, like that you referenced, that we live in a culture where the woman in most families does carry a heavier burden for the family. They are out or they're pregnant for 9 months and out on maternity leave longer. And so a business that has long hours, no remote work if you're on premise. I think there is some bias in there that doesn't seem like appealing to people that, hey, I want to have a family. The second thing that I saw is there's this unconscious bias around mentorship and sponsorship. We tend to promote and mentor in our likeness, people that are like you. All right. There's some
Right.
common thread in that. And so doesn't make you a bad person, but there's this kind of unconscious bias that very much happens. I had David Kong, the longtime CEO of Best Western's good friend. I've had him on the show, and he was the first Asian American of a large hotel company. And he talked about how there's also a culture bias in the United States, that this is why you have more diversity if you go to Europe versus the US, is because Americans want a very authoritative, strong leader. And there is this historical bias culturally that's like a strong man type
Right.
behavior. And he found it, coming from a Chinese family where you're more reserved, you listen before speaking, that he was seen as meek and weak. And I think those are things that we need to be more cognizant of. Well, we've come to the point of the show where we like to get into a little bit rapid fire. Best career advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, this is gonna sound weird, but don't cry. Don't let them see you cry. So I got that, and I don't know if that was literal, but it was, just this idea of like, this is kind of an emotional business. It's a complicated business. It's really unpredictable. You're dealing with human beings and, all the things. And the idea of just staying really level and trying not to react outwardly when something's going on. I think it's a sign of a good leader, just someone that, can handle it, even though you might be freaking out inside. It's just this idea of being really stoic and graceful. A female person I respect immensely told me that early on in my career, maybe for a variety of reasons, but I've always tried to do that.
That's good advice. What's the hardest decision you've ever had to make as COO?
I mean, it would have to be over it during COVID. We think of ourselves as a small company, but we're not. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of people, and I had to. At that time, now we have about 115 hotels, but back then we had like 85, and I had to lay off my whole team.
Yeah.
And so I had 85 general managers reporting to me. I was everything to them, and that was like so tough. And so when we started to resume operations in our hotels, because at one point at the height, I think we had 65 of the 85 suspended operations. And then we started to, bring people, like, as if we could open a certain number of hotels, like we did the math. We're like, all right, we can, if we take a deeper salary cut, then we can bring
Right.
back like this one person. Like, what you're making those decisions. But gosh, when I hired back the first person, and the first person I hired back is Aaliyah Kritzler. She's our vice president, food and beverage and lifestyle hotels. It was like, now, and then I was like, go to Georgia and Florida, because they didn't really close. So like, go there and open our restaurants and bars. But it was like, it was just so good to have somebody back and like, have that first resource. We were able to bring them back fast enough that they didn't go out and get other jobs, and they all came back to our company, which I think speaks so much about our company. And then, we're all just a big happy family again. But gosh, that was a tough thing.
Yeah, that was brutal. I remember in March of 2020, I wrote down, I remember it very vividly. We had 6,850 exactly full-time equivalent folks at Remington, and I wrote it on a notepad. This was around March 10th. And then on April 1st, I had HR pull me because we had to do the same thing. We ended up doing like a mass furlough, but eventually we had to let people go. It was 485 active associates on April 1st. I will never forget that number. I remember Stan Kennedy, who's retired now, who was my COO at the time, and I have talked about reminiscing like just a sleepless nights. I've often said I learned the most during COVID, but it's not a lesson I want to learn again.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Totally agree with you.
What is your favorite business book that you'd
Oh,
recommend?
yeah, one that I'd recommend. I mean, there's so many. It just kind of depends what you want to tap into, but I think Setting the Table is a good one.
AI, overhyped or underhyped? And we're going to play this back in 2 years.
Oh gosh, I know. They're like, oh, that crazy person thought that robots couldn't make beds, right? Like that was
Well,
me.
eventually they
Uh,
will. It's not a question of
yeah,
if, but it's a
yeah.
question of when at some point,
It's
I guess.
just a question of when. No, you're absolutely right. I guess I'm gonna say over because it's not under.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you could have dinner with any business leader, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would not waste my time at a dinner with a business leader. I would have dinner with Bob Dylan. I would love to have dinner with him.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, he's my favorite.
Well, Rachel, this has been so much fun. I'll have to have you back, and we'll have a long discussion about leadership in the workplace. But Rachel, what are you not done with?
I'm not done with learning. There's still so much to learn. And I think you learn the most from the people that are coming up in this industry. So I'm excited about what I have to learn again today and tomorrow and the rest of it.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.